holding the line for the conservative movement. This is Stacy on the Right on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
Let me be direct about the competition between the United States and China. As we manage shifting geopolitical trends, the United States will conduct itself as a reasonable leader. We do not seek conflict. We do not seek a Cold War. We do not ask any nation to choose between the United States or any other partner.
Maybe we can ask China to choose between the United States and TikTok, since that's where a lot of the grooming of our children is happening, since that's where a lot of the propaganda surrounding gender and all of the confusion, it's like literally centrally located on TikTok. And TikTok is a government surveillance app by the CCP. Maybe we should make people choose. We should make nations choose between us and their spyware. Maybe we should have a few standards, but not under Biden. All right, I digress. So let's welcome into the show Congressman Mike Flood. He represents Nebraska's 1st Congressional District. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. Yes, as part of my district, I also have Offutt Air Force Base, which is home to our nation's battle station for all of our nuclear defenses. So I'm very proud to represent Fighting 55th and STRATCOM, which resides just on the other side of the Missouri River.
And that's important. STRATCOM is literally a part of our national defense. And it is also something very interesting that you have those missile silos there. So this is an integral part of our national defense structure. And there's wireless technology that the Chinese are literally trying to place right there next to that base. It can't be that they're doing it because they want to start a knitting group or maybe teach people how to play mahjong. Could it be, Congressman?
It's dangerous. So we have good, credible evidence that there's a cellular company in the state of Nebraska that uses Huawei equipment. Huawei is a Chinese puppet. It's essentially Chinese software that is used in cellular technology, but it can also listen in. It can disrupt data networks. It can frustrate our ability to manage our nation's nuclear forces. And so, I basically have said to the Commerce Department, we need to get it out of there. If there are cellular companies using Chinese spyware in their equipment, they shouldn't be in business to be able to do that. And so that's my position. That's what I'm asking the Commerce Department to investigate.
So the Commerce Department, obviously, all of our departments fall under the Biden administration, and he is notoriously friendly with the Chinese. And so he does a lot of speech making to the contrary, but his actions towards them are subservient and, in my opinion, very risky for a U.S. president. Do you think the Commerce Department will pay attention to your concerns?
Well, the Commerce Department has started an investigation. Now, let's be clear. This same equipment in the UK has been banned by that government. They won't let Huawei do business in the UK. Here in the United States, there is cellular infrastructure that has the Huawei equipment. And quite frankly, when it's a slap in the face to the airmen that work at Offutt Air Force Base, 10,000 airmen go to work every day at Offutt Air Force Base, not to mention the missile silos out in the western panhandle of Nebraska, men and women manning our nuclear defenses, Minuteman missiles, whatnot. And our countryside is littered by cellular companies that have Huawei equipment in it. This stuff is banned in the UK. If you and I think about it, if somebody started a pirate radio station, the FCC would shut that down. That's nothing compared to what's going on with this Chinese equipment. And it's essentially equipment that's part of a company that's a puppet of the CCP. So, as a Nebraska congressman, I think it's a slap in the face to the people that go to work. It's dangerous for our national security. We go to bed at night hoping and praying to God that we have the national defenses to keep us safe. And here these men and women are working. We're relying on the protection. And the Chinese Communist Party's got software in our backyard while they're buying up farmland around our bases.
Yeah, they're presently trying to purchase 200 acres in southern Illinois across the river from St. Louis that they claim they want to put solar panels on. But that's viable farmland that we should be reserving for farming instead of, the solar panels. 200 acres of solar panels is going to do what for southern Illinoisans? Nothing. So the interesting bits of this story that you're trying to call attention to this, Congressman, is that you have more than 10,000 military members and civilians who work on off at Air Force Base. They have cell phones. They use those cell phones to transmit information about their work. They have text, they have data, and all of these things could be seen by the Chinese government because cellular service providers, at least one that we know of and possibly more, have installed Chinese equipment on nearby towers. Now, I kind of feel almost as if I want to ask that cellular company's president and, some of their people, CIO, CFO, what makes you want to use Huawei equipment over American-made equipment or the equipment of our allies like Taiwan or Japan? Why would you want to use Huawei? It seems like they would have heard something by now.
I think that's a very good question. And, to be honest, I've asked the Commerce Department to identify all carriers that are using Huawei equipment so that the people of Nebraska and the people of the United States understand exactly what's at stake and who's using it. And quite frankly, I think that equipment should be ripped out of there. We should be done with it. We should do what the UK has done. If we can control the airspace around major military installations, we can certainly control what kind of cellular technology is employed in America's heartland right next to our national defense system.
So those are questions that will get answered under the guise of the oversight of the Commerce Department. What have they done in the past in situations like this where the Chinese is trying to encroach? What does the Commerce Department actually do in those cases?
Well, it's interesting to me. So President Trump, he threw the first flag and basically said exactly what is going on. We don't want Huawei equipment in these cellular buildings. We don't want them on these towers. It's interesting to me, we have a very robust Federal Communications Commission. In this case, the executive branch has chosen to have the Commerce Department look into this. At the end of the day, I'm happy that a federal agency is investigating it, but I think we need to have answers. We need to know exactly what carriers are using this, what kind of risk do they pose, and exactly where is the technology placed. These missile silos are in very nondescript locations, ranging from Colorado, Wyoming to the Nebraska Panhandle, out in the Great West, and these cell companies operate towers nearby that have the Huawei equipment on it. Imagine if we had a national emergency and we had to have very secure communications, which we do, with our missile silo personnel to activate our resources in the event there was a higher threat or whatever it may be. We can't rely on a communications network that could be compromised by this Chinese equipment. I mean, it's just unacceptable. Would the Chinese allow this to happen in their mainland? Absolutely not. So, I'm pretty confident that when we get the answers to this and as Americans find out what's going on, there will be more than an investigation. Hopefully there's immediate action requiring this equipment to be removed from the towers. I think anything less is a disservice to the American people and it compromises our national security.
Absolutely. And so this goes to the very heart of something that President Trump kind of beat his hand on the table over and over again. He would, bang his fists and say, China is a threat to us. China is using all of our free market capitalism and our open society to harm us because they come in and they infiltrate and then they take advantage of the opportunities that we have here. And so you have been really pounding the desk as well, saying, look, Congressman Flood to Biden administration address concerns about Huawei encroaching on U.S. military installations. You are talking about taking on communist China and this whole idea where Biden reaffirmed the one China policy at the UN after saying that U.S. troops would defend Taiwan. So Biden's all over the map, but you're on message here. You're on target.
Well, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, Nebraskans, people in any state in the nation, we live in a homeland that's been safe for a reason because we have this nuclear ability that provides peaceful deterrence so that nations understand we are armed and we are ready to respond in the event we're attacked. God forbid anything like that happen. But we know every day the Chinese Communist Party wakes up and works on ways to weaken the United States, to take advantage of the United States. They are directly engaged in espionage of American innovation and technology and our nuclear secrets. They're working to undermine us. And one of the ways they do it is by creating a commercial product under the guise of a commercial company that's really a puppet for the Chinese government. And they sell this equipment around the world, which lets them listen into conversations around the world. That's unacceptable. And, quite frankly, if the Commerce Department determines that this equipment is, in fact, on certain cell towers, I think the American people need to know, A, who the carrier is, B, what the equipment's doing, and C, how does it compromise our national security. At least then we're armed with the information so that Americans can act and hold our government accountable to make sure the equipment is removed, and along the way, learn much more about what the Chinese government's doing every day to undermine our interests. Where's that fentanyl coming from across the Mexican border? The chemicals needed to make fentanyl come from China. They're pushing it into Mexico. The cartels are pushing it into the United States. It's yet another effort by the Chinese government to undermine what we're doing in the United States, to take lives, to disrupt communities, to cause social problems. I don't trust anything they're doing. And the fact that they've created this cell phone equipment that sits on top of innocuous cell towers in the middle of the nation should concern everybody. At the end of the day, let's find out what it is. Let's get the FCC involved. Let's make sure that the Commerce Department acts. And ultimately, let's pass legislation in the United States that does what the president should be doing, and that's getting this junk off of our towers in America and restoring our safety.
And we know that this is possible. That's why we have a Commerce Department. That's why we have congressmen like yourself. And everything you've said should be acted upon immediately because this is of the utmost urgency. It's always such a pleasure to have you here. We want to respect your time, Congressman Mike Flood, Nebraska's 1st Congressional District. Thank you so much. You are actually at U.S. Rep Mike Flood on Twitter. We've already tweeted about him, so if you're driving, you can follow him later. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me tonight.
You bet. Thank you very much for having me. Have a good night.
Hey, you too.